Hello, fellow nerds. Welcome to a very special episode of Our Nerdiest Thing. Not like after school special episode, but like a bonus episode.
I don't know. One time Blossom got her period. I was kind of into
it. Are you there, God? It's me.
Your period.
Yeah. We just watched the pilot episode of The Winchesters, which is basically a prequel extension of the supernatural universe. And we're going to talk about what we thought, what we liked, what we didn't, questions, concerns, and all of the above.
I have a lot of concerns.
I have a lot of questions.
I wrote what the fuck a lot in my notes.
So before we actually started watching the episode, we all wrote down kind of our expectations and what we thought it was going to be and what we were thinking we were going to get from this pilot episode. So we're going to share what our expectations were before we started watching, and then we're going to talk about how we felt while we were watching it. So who wants to go first with the expectations?
Whitney, I think you should go
Me?
first.
Okay, I'm going to just read what I typed out in my phone. I said, I think overall it will be okay, but not great. I think obviously Jensen will be in the pilot to start off the story since he is the narrator as Dean. I think we may see stock footage, and I didn't really mean stock footage. I meant like old clips from Supernatural of John and Mary. I think Bobby might be in the first episode, and then later I thought, no, why would he be in the first episode? Because he didn't know them that early.
He knew Mary.
Well then maybe he would have.
Because remember, and maybe this is my nerdiest thing, when they go into like the other universe later and he's never met John, he still
knows Mary. That's true. Well, I said, nice. I think Bobby might be in the first episode. I'd like that. That's what I typed out. I wonder if Dean will be narrating this from heaven or if this is before he died, because...
Can I go ahead and say, and I remember I was a bad fan and I was so sad that it was ending. I didn't watch the ending when it ended. I watched it like 3 months later at a craft weekend with Mindy. And when Dean dies by getting a nail in the back of the head, I was like, what the hell is happening right now?
That ending.
He went out by a nail.
No, I liked that ending.
I kind of did too.
I liked it.
Suck.
Sorry.
I'll tell you.
No, he needed to be like ripped to shreds. Go out.
No, but then he wouldn't be the strong hero.
See, that's
he got killed by a nail. That's not very strong.
But think about all they went through. Like for me, like that was the more surprising end because. I mean, they stopped like how many apocalypses and like all that stuff. Like they've been through the worst.
It's just like
so it was sort of poetic.
Happens.
It was sort of poetic that he would just end.
I just was disappointed by that and Jared's wig. But
here's the other thing: like, would you have been like, what would have made it like how
feel
big,
satisfying?
Yeah, how big would it have had to be satisfying since they'd already been through it? Like it had to have been bigger than anything they've been through before.
That's a really, really good point. I don't know. Like I think maybe I would have liked to have seen like Chuck obliterate him or something.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting ahead of ourselves because you guys, just so you know, between the three of our group, we've done seven supernatural cons. From Creation Entertainment, supernatural only cons. That Mindy and I drove to Chicago one year on a whim and like scalped some tickets off of someone, and that's how it started. And I didn't get to go last time, and you two did, and I was sad.
It was really fun though.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry.
You don't sound very sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
I also said. Oh, talking about Dean, like when is this happening? I said before he died, wasn't he with Sam all the time? So how could Jared not be in this? I typed out,
According to Twitter, he wasn't invited.
No, that was part of that's the next thing that I say. I really want it to be great, but I'm nervous. Jensen's involvement makes me have hope. I'd love a Jared cameo, but there is no way he will be in this pilot after the Twitter drama of the show being announced. And that was all I wrote for my expectations. So like, cautious optimism, I feel like. It's not going to be great. That's kind of how I felt it was going to be. What did you guys say before we started watching? Mindy?
Well, and I think I revealed my main issue to you all. My very, very, very first thought is please don't fuck this up. I really, really, really want it to succeed and I really want it to be good. But I actually kind of have a mediocre expectation. Like, I don't want to be disappointed. So I'm not going to overhype it in my mind. I really, really, really hope, like, what I'm really hoping for is that there's chemistry between the main characters. Like, there has to be that chemistry right off the bat for me, or it'll kind of completely ruin it for me.
Right. They're soulmates.
Yeah. So if I had to give it a grade, like, my guess is that I'm going to probably grade it a C.
What did you grade it with?
I don't think I actually gave it a grade, but that would be my, like, C. Like, it's not horrible, but also not great. Like, that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I agree. Deb, what about you?
Well, I had a lot of expectations. First of all, they marketed the shit out of this.
They really
I
did.
was seeing it everywhere, which was really, really great, which got me excited. And I think the fact that we've gone to all these supernatural cons would tell you how much we're into the show. I had some high expectations, and I was really hoping for a cameo from the Angel Castiel, who was played by Misha Collins, because Misha kept posting about it on social, which I guess is really awesome of him.
Right.
But I thought it was for sure because he was going to be in the first episode. I also wanted them to say we've got work to do, because that's what they say in the first episode. In the 200th episode, they also say that. It's kind of like a callback to fans, which there is one later in the episode, which I really like, that I wrote one down. I did say I wanted it to be as scary as the first episode of Supernatural. I remember in 2005, I watched that first episode by myself, which was The Lady in White, and it scared the
freaky.
shit out of me.
The whole first season is kind of like that.
It scared me so much that I didn't watch it again until season 4. And I restarted it with episode 1 of season 4 when Castiel actually comes in.
Yeah.
So I expected a B+. That's what I wanted, because I had actually heard some great things about it today, and I wish I hadn't seen anything. I think it was also a C. It's got a lot of potential. I think I'll watch it every week.
Me too.
I wrote down too, the very first episode of Supernatural, the special effects are pretty bad in that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
they had 15 years to fix that,
to get it right. But
it's not 2005 anymore, guys.
You never put money into the pilot, though.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to remind myself.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I have issues with some of the special effects and the music
issues.
So C- for me.
Well, let's do a Nerdiest recap of the episode.
Okay. Did you draw?
I did
That's
draw.
me.
It's Mindy, but a drop of water or something fell on it, so it kind of looks like Randy. Randy, you got 30 seconds.
I think that's more of a nickname for Deb.
When you listen to episode 3 next week, you'll understand why they're saying that.
That is accurate.
And if you're in the Sarah J. Matt, there's a Court of Thorns and Roses 18 plus group on Facebook, and I shared a text exchange between me and my husband when he was editing episode 3, and apparently I was really horny that night. I say some stuff, and I was like, I don't remember saying any of that, and I listened to it, and I was like, God, I needed to get laid.
All right, Randy, are you ready?
Ready.
All right,
Randy.
ready, set, 30 seconds.
All right, so we open up, and John Winchester he was in the military, and he's coming home, and he literally runs into Mary Campbell, and they run at each other, and he knocks all her shit on the ground, and they have this weird exchange, and then randomly he shows up, and he's talking to a demon, and she shows up and kicks his ass, not John the demon, and then they go off hunting for their dads, and a lot of shit happens.
Good job, you did it. And then stuff happened. People talked.
I'd like it to be known that I drank Whitney's cocktail.
I'd like it to be known that I was always going to drink double what they did, and then had another one. But I also have a much higher tolerance than you two.
This is true.
But also Artie was saying words that don't exist.
So let's get into the episode. And I'm going to just go right off the bat and say that I am confused about one major plot issue that I see. So obviously this is a different show, right? It's the Winchesters. However, it is an extension of an extremely established universe
that the fans take extremely seriously,
right?
And canonically,
there is lore. There are facts within the world of Supernatural, there are 15 seasons of a universe they have created, right? So someone please explain to me how it is that John Winchester in this pilot episode is like, Jabins? What? Hunting? I'm killing a monster?
I know all about these things.
Right. And then
he's not surprised at all.
In a time travel episode in Supernatural, Dean goes back in time, meets a younger version of his parents where John has no idea of any of this. He has no idea that Mary is a hunter, that Mary's family are hunters. Like, he is absolutely in the dark.
And in that same episode gets his mind erased by the angels from all the shit that has happened.
I forgot about that.
Is it because they erase what he remembers a whole bunch of times? Because they do.
Maybe.
In Supernatural, they do talk about that in season 4 about how Dean and Sam have died several times, but it's the first time that they've ever let them remember it. So maybe it's the same type of thing, but it felt like a really big issue to have in the first episode.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I mean, I understand how in the pilot you can't really be like, hey guys, we know that in Supernatural it's different, but we're going to explain it later. Like, I get that. But at the same time, like you said, that's a glaring difference, mistake, error. I don't know. It from the get-go, I was like, wait a second, this is not the John Winchester that we know from 15 seasons of an established show.
And speaking of John Winchester, I wrote down, God, John Winchester's really pretty, but not as pretty as Matt Cohen, who plays the young John Winchester in Supernatural. Matt is really pretty.
Yeah,
Well,
I have to agree with the Matt Cohen for sure. I don't know. I'm not feeling the John Winchester in this.
I don't know. I kind of like him.
I
Yeah.
like him a lot.
Maybe it's because I'm older than you all, and like I'm almost 50, so
But we
that guy is
also-
like literal like.
well, he's
like 12.
Younger.
Yes.
He's younger than all of us.
I know, but
for
he's
sure.
No,
much
he's not.
younger than me.
What are you talking about? He's not younger than me.
Well, he's definitely
like-
younger than me.
Like honestly, like what is he? He's in his early 20s in this, right?
I think he's supposed to be like
So
20 at the oldest, maybe.
Oh, so my oldest child is older than him. That's pretty creepy.
Welcome to Cougar Town.
Can I just say, going back to the beginning of this episode, when the show opens, it's supposed to be Samuel Winchester, who is Mary Winchester's father, Sam and Dean's grandfather. He is like in this little cave and he's opened this box. It was so Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I am so glad you said that.
The hat and everything.
I could not
Multiple
focus.
times. I was like, Indiana Jones. Indiana
Where's
Jones.
the big ball that's going to come out of the ceiling and chase? No, a ball didn't chase him. A spider did.
Question mark. Spider? Question mark.
Spider?
Unclear what exactly it was.
Well, and I wrote because it's like this weird, like it opened, like he's there for a reason. He opens this thing, and then it's like this big shocker that something evil comes out. I'm like, what did you expect, dumbass?
With
like,
a blood sigil. What did
when you open a
expect?
tomb with a blood sigil, what did
Right.
you expect?
You know what? I'm going to drop some blood on this, and I bet some puppies are going to come out. Not mean puppies, cute little
Cute,
puppies.
cuddly.
Yes.
Yeah, they're only like 7 weeks old, and they want to snuggle all the time. Those kinds of puppies.
Talking about the Indiana Jones kind of feel, one of the things that I wrote down is what I said at the beginning. Like, I understand that this is a different show. I get that. But it felt too different from Supernatural for me to, like you said, that it was very heavily marketed, right? Like, they were really hyping the show up. And obviously they're hyping it up via Supernatural, which was a show that ran for 15 seasons. This is a prequel. It is connected to the Supernatural
But
world.
to your point, there's a Game of Thrones sequel out right now, and no one has said, like, what the hell? This has nothing to do. Like, it has to stay within the same world.
Right. It doesn't feel like the same universe. It doesn't feel the same.
creepy at all either.
Yeah,
like what
I
I
didn't
wanted
either.
when you
I
said
didn't
that
think
you
so.
wanted to feel like you did that first episode of Supernatural, it was super creepy and super dark.
Yeah.
And I felt like, first of all, it wasn't hardly dark at all, really, to me.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't have that like heavy dark overtone to it.
They relied too heavily on people knowing what they were talking about. So if you have a new viewer that's not seen Supernatural, they're not going to know what a Rougarou is. They're not
Right.
going to know what a blood sigil is. They're not going to know that Mary Winchester's father is Dean's grandfather. Like, they don't know any of that.
Who any of these people are.
And they didn't set up enough of the universe again because, I mean, how many years has Supernatural been off now? 2 or 3? That's a long time for people like me that don't still watch it on repeat. Like, seriously, every night in bed. It's on when I go to sleep. Like, if you're not that kind of person, you're like, okay, so why is he dripping blood on that? And what is that monster? And why is that monster important?
Well, and even like you just said, nobody's going to know what what is it? Rougarou?
Do you want me to go ahead and talk about the Rougarou? Because I actually...
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, I have watched all 15 seasons of Supernatural, and I thought he said loop-de-loop. Okay. So I still didn't know what was going on.
As soon as the episode was over, I was like, I want to, be a nerd like I always am and like look into the Rougarou because I couldn't remember what they were, even though it sounded familiar. And here's what's funny. I wrote down... Whitney thought it was a loop-de-loo, and it's based off the French term loup-garou.
See, I wasn't that far off.
Okay, so a rougarou is a legendary creature from French or French-speaking communities that's actually linked to a traditional werewolf. It's... And in these cultures, it's a human that's linked to lycanthropy, which we talked about in episode 1 of this show. But in Native American cultures, episode 2 of this show, I was just
sorry.
I was just corrected.
My mind is a steel trap.
I don't know what episode we're in, but you couldn't remember what a loop-de-loo was. Okay,
I also couldn't remember Mary's last name. So.
Right. So, okay. I'm like disappointed in you as a fan. Campbell. It's Campbell. It took me a second. I was like, what is her last name?
They said it like halfway through the episode.
Okay. So in Native American cultures, if you're cursed with lycanthropy, you never go back to human form like werewolves would do.
That's
so
a bummer.
The garou means a man who transforms into an animal, and it's said to have the body of a man but the head of a wolf. Did that look like a body of a man and a head of a wolf to you?
Definitely
It did not.
It looked like really bad Japanese Godzilla.
It very much reminded me, because I saw it and was like, that is so familiar. Why is that so familiar to me? To me, it looks like the licon from Underworld, the Underworld movies.
Those didn't even look that bad.
And those are also, 20 years ago?
Yeah, those movies are awesome.
I really like those movies too, but like that's what it reminded me of. And like what we were saying a few minutes ago, the pilot episode of actual Supernatural back in 2005 also had some questionable technology, but it was also 2005. Right. And it's 2022. And I don't know. I feel bad critiquing so much because I don't know how to do it. I know. Well, and I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know how much money that costs. I don't know what other technology options there are. But I also know that it looked like a character or a monster, whatever, from a 20-year-old movie.
Yeah.
And it's 2022.
It looked like, I felt it looked like a little older than that, but I'm going to be kind about it. So here's what's scary in the French speaking communities, like culture, about the rougarou. It prowls the swamps to look for misbehaving children.
Ooh.
First of all,
in the swamps,
if your kid's at the swamp, they're probably misbehaving.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like their timeout spot.
Right. You're like, you go down to the swamp. Don't let the rougarou eat you. So I started thinking, I'm like, what scared the shit out of me as a child? Like those mythical creatures. And you know what it was for me? And it's close to Halloween, so I can say this, because I bet it's getting read to an elementary school class somewhere. Do you guys remember the Talipo?
No.
It's a story about, and I'll like post the author and stuff in the comments of this episode on Instagram, but it's a story about like this like person that lives out in the woods, and someone keeps saying, "Where's my Talipo?" And this person hears it all night.
Sounds like a bad sex dream.
Where's my Talipo, bitch? I guess I'm not the horny one tonight. Dear God. So the Talipo, this person keeps hearing the Talipo all night long. Like apparently something has been stolen from this creature. And the book ends with them hearing it at the foot of their bed. And someone read this to me in the
Immediately
third
no.
grade.
That's a big nope for me.
It's fucking
Yeah.
terrifying.
You know what
Okay?
scared me as a kid, though, was just men with beards.
So So previous to hipsters, pedophiles. Mindy, what scared you as a child?
God, I can't even think of anything.
You were fearless.
I was.
She wasn't scared.
I just hated being alone. I know, right? I just didn't want to be by myself.
I'm so glad we found each other.
I know.
Okay, so the way that you can protect yourself from a Rougarou is by laying 12 small objects by the door, and this made me laugh so hard. 12? Right, so listen, it's because when a person changes to a Rougarou, they forget how to count past 12. This explains it's because they only worry about midnight and the moon, which doesn't make sense if they never change back into a human to me.
Does it matter what objects then?
No, you could put some I'm picturing jacks that in the Berenstain Bears, remember when
I went way darker. I was like, oh, bones.
I'm like, how about some leftovers? Here's that shit we didn't
Barbie shoes. I don't know.
Did my chopsticks count as 1 or 2?
Right. So if you guys remember back in Supernatural, there is a Rougarou episode, and it's actually called Metamorphosis. It's in season 4, episode 4. And the Rougarous eat long pig or human flesh in this episode. And in all of these different cultures, besides being bitten, that's how one can turn into a Rougarou, is through cannibalism or through crazy amounts of sin, I guess. So I remember in this episode being so grossed out, and my husband will comment on every time I watch it. He's like, "Oh my God, this episode's disgusting," and it's because at the beginning the guy is eating raw ground beef. Do you remember this?
Oh,
because he wants meat so bad.
Now I remember it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah, that's nasty.
So in Native American legend, these are also linked to Wendigos, which is one of the first Supernatural episodes, which I find interesting. And Wendigos are also turned by participating in cannibalism. And yeah, the Rougarous, though, are supposed to look like dudes with a wolf head, and that is not what I saw.
Yeah,
definitely not what I was.
Yeah.
No.
But I didn't know anything about the Rougarou, so I think that's kind of neat.
I didn't remember.
Still not as scary as the Taily Po.
Or a guy with the beard. I do want to say a couple of positive things that I wrote down. I wrote down a lot more negative things. But I did like that they had the same kind of theme in this Winchesters pilot episode as they did in the Supernatural pilot episode of we're looking for our dad, right? We have
I wrote that down too.
Yeah, 2 different characters in the Winchesters are looking for their dads. That's the whole kickoff of the plot of Supernatural in that pilot episode. I'm going through my notes and just writing. I was really sassy, I guess, when I was writing these notes. I said, cemetery thing, that's a real buzzkill, John. He was like, this is the second cemetery I've been to this week. And she was like, oh.
Nice.
She's like, that's not
nice
sexy.
pickup line, dude.
She's like, I was hoping to make out in this cemetery, but whatever. You know what they say in this episode that I caught is saving people hunting things.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
I wrote that down too.
Barf.
That was
I love that.
I thought it was a little too cheesy.
I needed something that was homage to the first Supernatural episode, though.
But that was super obvious and I don't know. I don't like the context it came in. When he was talking to his mom and he's like, saving people, hunting things is what I was meant to do.
Yeah, that's what I was born for.
Speaking of his mom, who owns a garage, a woman in the 70s owning a garage, which would have never happened, unfortunately. Also, I think kind of an issue that I had in terms of continuum of the plot is whenever you meet John in Supernatural, he does not work for his mother's garage. He works for someone else's. So what happened to his mom in those last couple
I
of
wrote
years?
that down too because I couldn't remember and I was trying to look it up and I couldn't find any solid details. But I was like, I'm pretty sure that it was not his mom's garage.
I'm hoping it's because he forgot and she's in a safe place and he's working for another garage.
Or
but
something.
I don't know. It's his mom never existed.
Right. Yeah. Well, and his dad didn't really ever exist until they made it part of the story with the Men of Letters stuff.
I will say a pro for me is that they immediately brought in the Men of Letters because, and I even looked at you guys in the middle of the episode and I was like, oh, John never knew what happened to his dad.
Yeah.
And because, as we know, Abaddon kills all of them off in the Men of Letters, and John Winchester goes into the future to try Henry Winchester goes into the future to try to find his son and finds Sam and Dean instead.
Yeah.
But what's weird to me, like, and this is one of my questions, because everything has a question mark in my notes. I was like, how did he... Did John? I was thinking, did John Winchester even know about the Men of Letters? Like, was that in the journal?
I don't any of this.
Yeah, like the boys didn't know about any of this stuff. Like,
so it wouldn't have been in the journals because they have been.
But clearly he knew about it. Like, why wouldn't he be like, "Hey, there's this awesome bunker that gives you all the answers."
Hey, you don't have to go shack up with Bobby every time you need somewhere to stay.
Like, it feels like a huge chunk of information that John would not have left out.
Since they've already established in the supernatural world, like you were talking about, Deb, that you can, or the angels or whoever, can basically like do the Men in Black thing on your mind and like press the button and you forget. Here comes the Men in Black. I feel like that's a pretty easy plot device at some point to do that. But I also feel like
it's a cop out, though.
Yeah, it's... You can't just like restructure the entire story and be like, well, I guess it's okay because we can just blank his memory out later.
Right.
Question mark. And that's us assuming, right? Like, who knows what they're actually thinking? Who knows what they're thinking?
But, I want to hope because like Jensen Ackles, he was at New York Comic Con this last weekend. I read some articles where he said like he'll never be done with Dean Winchester. So surely he wants to do this justice, right?
I'm sure
and
he does.
A pilot's a pilot.
Yes.
Right? It is like kind of the bare minimum that you can do of a good show. So am I going to continue to watch? Absolutely.
Well, and I'll say too, going off of that point, all of my favorite shows that I will rewatch over and over and over again, their pilots kind of suck.
Mm-hmm. Except for Veronica Mars, that was a really good pilot.
Well, that's true. That honestly is true. But most of the shows that I really like and rewatch, the pilots are not good. Like, they're not the best part of the show. Like, the writers are still trying to figure out where the characters are going to go, where the story's going to go. Like, actors are still probably getting to know each other and getting that chemistry and camaraderie and the friendships going. So I want to take everything with like a grain of salt, right? Like, I'm not going to not watch it anymore.
Well, and being, us going to all these cons and everything, we kind of know that the actors really from the beginning clicked. Like, this is not Supernatural was not a typical pilot, was not a typical show.
Right.
It lasted way longer than it probably should have. But a lot of that was due to the fact that the main characters just clicked from the very beginning, and so did the crew. Apparently,
they love each other.
Yeah, like they really became a family from the very start. So that's I have to like remind myself that that's atypical. So something even though it's an offshoot of that, and there really are some familiar faces. Like Robbie Thompson wrote this episode.
That was the first thing I wrote down.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
a writer from Supernatural
wrote this. So it's like there's definitely like. There's going to be that cohesiveness, but it's not going to be the very same. It's not the same people. It's not the same cast. It's not the same crew. So there's going to be some growing pains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good way to say it. Growing pains. One question that I had, which is another like continuity kind of thing. At one point in the episode, they're outside a bookstore and a demon basically like calls Mary out and is like, come here, Mary, let's have a conversation, I guess. But I wrote down, why does this demon have a crazy exorcist voice?
Yeah, I wrote down stigmata. Did you ever watch that? When all the demons
but I know
like
what you're
talk
talking
like
about.
that, where it's like this very distorted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that was not a thing in Supernatural.
Did they kind of blow it off though? Didn't they? Like, oh well, it's different when it's a brand new host body. Like, I feel like
there
they
were always
that
brand new host bodies. Like,
I know, but I think that's sort of like. But yeah, that was kind of weird.
And I think we have to give this show space to create its own rules.
Yes.
And that's what's going to be really hard for a prequel to Supernatural, because the fans have a set of rules in their mind.
Right.
Can we talk really quick about the shrapnel that John pulls out of his arm?
Yes.
So he talks at one point about, it's really sad. He's got some PTSD. He's seeing the ghost of his friend that died in the war in the back seat, which I didn't like that Mary pulled out the EMF and was like, there's no fucking ghost, you weirdo. Like, I kind of wish he hadn't done that because as someone who's been diagnosed with PTSD, like, I don't see people that aren't there, but it's a very difficult thing to go through. And some people do see things. And I don't like that was discounted from a point of mental health. But he talks about how when his friend died, he has parts of his like cross necklace in his arm. And then all of a sudden this Rougarou's there and he's like, oh, I can totally get this out of my arm real quick.
I wrote, I'm going to leave this metal in my arm until I need it.
Well, and in the timeline of the show, the way that I understood it, and this may not be correct, but the way that I was understanding it was this event with this fellow soldier, the shrapnel in his arm, like that had just happened.
Right.
Had it, right?
Like,
that's kind of how I took it. Like, it was very recent.
This is horrible for me to ask, and I should know this. How long was the Vietnam War? Because, I
think it was like 10 years.
Right. So that could have been, it couldn't have been too long ago, though, because I think John's like 21.
Right. Well, it said it was 1972, right? So I think the Vietnam War started in what, like 68-ish? Give or take
So
a
are
year?
you supposed to believe that John and Mary were together for like 6 or 7 years before they got married? That was really unheard of in the 70s.
They were together for 6 or 7 years before they had Dean.
The Vietnam War ended in 75, so it was 3 years after. Wait, no. Yeah, because it was 72 when it opened up. Was it 72?
So he must have been discharged for some reason, and maybe it was PTSD.
Yeah.
But I think your point is it's not like that really would have been healed up. And
Right.
I don't know if you have ever had like a foreign object in your body. I stepped on glass in college, like a picture frame broke in one of the spare bedrooms, and I literally slipped on it, and skid, and like tons of,
Ew.
and it was clear glass, so they couldn't get it out of my foot. They couldn't find it, right? So like a year later, something is like, I'm like, what is bugging me like on the top of my foot? And you're going to gag, Whitney. I pulled out a piece of glass that was like no shit, half an inch long. It was like the full like thickness of my foot. So I find it very hard. Now, again, like they don't care about this kind of shit, but like he legit pulled out a cross with like barely any of it missing out of his arm. It wasn't like a piece of the cross. It was big enough to jab inside this Godzilla motherfucker that was chasing him.
Still not big enough to really do damage. I was like, really?
Well,
Like,
he didn't even ask, like, how much silver do you need? And I'm like, enough silver that you would have been able to get that out of your arm if you can just cut yourself and pull it out.
I feel like, and this is like a positive for the show, but a negative at the same time with this whole plot point, because I felt like that whole sequence was to show that John was like willing to self-sacrifice for the good of other people, right?
Which he always did.
Right. Well, and that's something that Dean always did too, right? Like Dean was willing to do whatever it took, just like John was. And I was like, okay, I see that. Like, I appreciate that parallel. But I feel like there wasn't quite enough setup of the significance of the shrapnel for him to really make it a poignant, like, emotional
And I agree
moment,
with that,
you know?
because usually military men, which we know that John continued to essentially be one once he returned home, they are rule followers and pillars of their community. So I found it kind of hard to believe that he would just like leave and like leave
skip
his mom.
town.
Yeah. And you know what? If you have PTSD, that can make you do things that are, outside of like your normal lifestyle choices or whatever. But so maybe that has something to do with it, because I feel like it sounds like we're dogging the show, and I did have fun watching it. Like I said, I'll continue to watch it, but just a critique.
And this is something that you said a few minutes ago about like the fandom. We all have our set rules of the show, but I mean, it's not really our rules. It's Supernatural's rules. You know what I mean? But one of the things I wrote down is this show is coming in at a deficit, because it is connected to this super popular, very successful, rabid fandom, right? And there's just no way that you're ever going to be able to create something that everybody is going to be satisfied with, that everyone's going to be entertained by. You're just not going to be able to do it,
Right.
you know? And
you're never going to please everybody.
right. And not to say that they're not going to make like a really great show. However, when you have such expectations and such the kind of fandom that Supernatural has, there's no way that you can live up to those expectations.
What's weird for me is I was a theater major in college, so things that have to do with acting and whatnot, I'm sort of a nerd about it. Like, I can't forgive bad acting, and the acting was a little bad for me, and I can't forgive like things that aren't true to life. So, like, for instance, we're talking about him. He just got out of the military. He had way too much hair. Like, nobody grows their hair out that fast after the military. And he's I don't know. I didn't feel like he had a military personality at all. He was very he was a little soft for me to even be John. Like, I get that he gets hardened over the years. Like, I can see that as like a character development. But even for what this character was supposed to be in this, he felt soft to me. I don't know. I'm picky.
Well, maybe
about
that's
stuff
what I
like
was
that.
saying too. Like, he wasn't really regimented enough, and like, it wasn't that in Supernatural John didn't come back and he was anti-military. He still lived that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. It's kind of surprising that he would just kind of come back and be like this all-American boy.
Yeah.
That really wasn't who he was. But I will say it made for nice eye candy.
What did you guys think of the romance of it all? Just the meet cute of John and Mary, and the little like longing looks, like
I
sneaking
didn't feel
peeks
the
at each other.
chemistry. I
like,
really didn't.
I will say it was pretty funny whenever he's like about to go into the Men of Letters bunkers, and he has the key, and that demon shows up, and she shows up and is going to fight off the demon, and he's trying to protect her, and elbows her in the face.
Yeah,
And she's
that
like,
was
"Would you
funny.
stop helping me?"
Right.
That was
I liked
awesome.
that
That
a lot.
actually was a funny
I
scene.
did really like that.
I enjoyed that.
I did feel the chemistry. I feel like almost to the opposite of John, though, that like Mary was a little softer and did want to leave the life, and like she's almost like too hard right now for the amount of time that's left before she softens up before Supernatural. I don't know. Maybe
I
it's
actually
because
agree with that, yeah.
maybe it's because she becomes a mother. I mean, I changed significantly whenever
Yeah.
that happened, right? And then eventually changed back as my kids got older. But maybe that's really what it is. But even like as they're still dating in Supernatural, she is this very like soft, understanding person. And this, she's like, dude, get the fuck out of my way. Like,
Yeah.
So.
I actually believed her more as a young Mary than I believed him as a young John.
See, I felt the exact
I
opposite.
did
That's
too.
so
Really?
funny. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I don't know that I really have any solid reason for that. It's just kind of like she doesn't feel like Mary to me, which is so like
I think
subjective.
You all are thinking of Mary when she was a mom. In my mind, I'm thinking of Mary in the end of the show after I'm actually thinking probably of alternate reality Mary.
Yeah.
Like, and then
Yeah.
Mary, like, when she comes back and doesn't she kill Ketch? Does she?
She does kill Ketch.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that Mary. That's the one
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of, and I see glimpses of that in this young
That's
Mary.
a really good point, because when she does come back after she's been in heaven and everything, like she's pretty pissed off that she's
Yeah.
back on Earth, and she does mess some stuff up, and she's so upset that like she doesn't stay with Sam and Dean. She says that she needs time and
Yeah.
space, and like
Yeah, that's true.
you know what I mean. And so it's not that soft mother that we always saw, and I think it was honestly really jarring as a viewer at that time, to be like, what do you mean you don't want to be around your kids you haven't
Yeah.
seen? But like she was really happy where she was, and she she didn't need saving, right? And I think she was very, very bitter that
Yeah.
she had been quote unquote saved and brought back into this super hard life. So I like that, Mindy. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's true. I like the romance of it. I don't know that I necessarily think that they have a lot of chemistry at this point, but I just like, I don't know. I feel like for Supernatural, the Supernatural show, the romance side of it was always my favorite part, and it was hardly ever there, right? And so I
Yeah.
always like kind of missed it. Like my favorite storyline was always Dean and Lisa and Ben.
Me too.
Always.
I was about to say, don't you dare say Sam and Amelia, or I'm going to kick you.
Who would say that? I don't think anybody in the fandom would say that.
Whitney's coughing on her cough drop.
Sorry.
I like, there is very few supernatural plots I skip over, and Amelia is one of them.
See,
talk about having no chemistry.
The episode that I watched today was like the very end of that Sam and Amelia, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought this was already done. Like,
yeah.
why am I still seeing flashbacks to Amelia?
It was a lot of, same thing though, a lot of plot continuity problems.
Well, yeah, that's
right
true.
with that whole.
But yeah, I didn't mind the romance of it, but I agree with you. There's not a ton of chemistry.
It's not that I minded the romance. I mean, obviously they end up together. There's going to be a romantic aspect to this. Like, but it felt very contrived to be this early on. Like, they're going to end up together. Let's have a little like less of that sort of like, I don't know. I feel like it maybe should have started off a lot more contentious than it even did.
Right. For the three of us, knowing what we read, and for the listeners of our podcast, we really like a slow burn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a slow burn. No. And I really do remember thinking that like it was not instant for them. So maybe,
well, and like she got jealous when he was talking to Lotta, right? That was her name.
I think it was Lotta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The British best friend.
I was like, I don't know anybody.
The British sidekick.
Yeah. She was really cute.
Like he was talking to her and they had that like moment where he was like, you know, oh, let's be nervous together or something. And he helps her out of the van. Yeah. And then you cut to Mary with this like glare, like, fuck you,
know what,
Lotta.
though? That was the John that I saw that I really liked, though, that really did care about people, because he honestly wasn't that nervous. And he stops and
it was a nice
her.
moment.
Yeah, it really was. It was a good,
too.
like, kind of character development for him. And it's that John that we see that Matt Cohen plays later that is, like, very attentive and loving and, you know, an
really
empath.
sweet.
Yeah.
While we're talking about side characters, can we talk about Carlos?
What do you want to... Do you mean Jacob...
Jacob Black.
Jacob 2.0.
Where the hell have you been, Loca?
I put... where did I put gay Jacob? ?
I didn't even write any notes about Carlos. I was not a fan of the Carlos character.
I put Carlos, is he supposed to be gay? Ugh, so cliche. Gay Jacob? ?
I got Lotta as a character because she's almost like, she works in the library. She understands lore.
It's like functioning as a Bobby character.
Yeah, absolutely. But Carlos shows up out of the blue. He's another hunter that like Mary doesn't trust. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden he's like the bisexual sidekick.
It was either he was not flamboyant enough or he was too flamboyant. Like he didn't take it either way. I don't know.
I wonder if they were trying to go for a really quirky, eccentric character like an Ash or like a Garth, and it just like didn't
kind of
hit.
fell flat a little bit.
But I'm with you. Like, it was all of a sudden they mentioned him a couple of times before he actually showed up on the screen.
Yes.
And then I felt like I needed a little bit more like warning about Carlos. Like the mentions of him before he actually showed up, I didn't tell me anything about his character. You know what I mean? Like
the mentions of him made me think he was going to be this like vigilante and like the kind of guy that like doesn't play by the rules, and he like I didn't see like quirky, offbeat. In my mind, I was expecting it to be like, I don't know. Neither of you watched The Umbrella Academy.
I've watched a little bit of it.
I was expecting like a Diego. If anybody's watched, he was like the vigilante. You know, like he goes out and you know he's the knife thrower, and he just really like this kind of a gung ho character, and that's what I was expecting. And so maybe that's why I was a little like off put by him. But it just really like that character did not connect with me at all.
You know what could be
felt very Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that's true.
He was silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I wrote down that I thought was fascinating that has to do with Carlos is he looks at John at one point and says, "We need to get you some clothes from this decade."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was weird,
And
too.
when he said that, I looked at him and I was like, he is dressed like he's from the early 2000s. So what is that about? I mean, he was in like nice blue jeans.
You're
and-
right. Like when I think about it now, like putting him in that, but
The
really
early
even
70s.
and Mary too. Like I didn't feel like her clothes
she
screamed
looked like
70s.
Kate Moss.
Yeah, like
Did. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Like he literally is the only one that looked like he was from the 70s. Carlos.
Right. So that could be fascinating what
Yeah,
they do with that, or
interesting.
if it wasn't an
That's a
accident.
great
I was going to
point.
say if they do anything with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
may or may not.
Yeah, I don't know why you would say that though.
Yeah,
and
that-
have him show the clothes he's giving to John.
Yeah.
if that wasn't going to be a plot point later.
See, I took that as just kind of like a stereotypical characterization of like a flamboyant
Yeah, I kind of did too.
gay character.
Yeah,
Like,
But
well,
it-
obviously
but-
he's into clothes and fashion.
But I
you know?
didn't notice the sort of juxtaposition of the other characters. Like now that I'm looking back, I'm like, yeah, it didn't feel 70s, other than
The fact that they
Carlos's
told us it
clothes
was.
and his van.
and his van,
Yeah.
his stoner van.
The cars, yeah. The only thing really that I wrote down that had anything to do with Carlos and the other girl, which I know you said her name,
Lotta.
that just feels like an Austin Powers joke.
Lot of vagina.
Sorry. The only thing I wrote down is I thought it was weird that they seem to be formulating this like group of 4 to focus on when Supernatural as a show didn't ever do that, right? Like 4 is a lot of people.
That's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
an
lot
ensemble
of people.
show.
And like I've said this multiple times, and I'll say it again. It's a different show, and I understand that. But I think that is part of what contributed to it feeling like a completely different world than Supernatural
what
to me.
is interesting about that, though, knowing that Jensen Ackles, who played Dean, helped create this, is constantly he and Sam talked about how it was a 2-person show and how like they didn't really get a lot of breaks and they were always the ones working. So I wonder if he did that because he was like, look, you got to have more than one storyline
yeah.
because it's
Well,
exhausting.
and maybe they do. They want it to be a different show. Like, I mean, if they made it just these 2 people, it would be too similar.
Yeah.
Like they're bringing in some different dynamics. I mean, I can see that as being something that they would want to do to make it stand out, to make it a little bit different. Yeah, I don't know that, but it does. It seems like a lot of storylines to sort of keep up with.
Yeah. 4 people plus, a monster of the week or whatever, however they're going to do what they're hunting, right? Like
Right.
it's a lot. It's a lot of storyline and it's a lot of names for me to remember.
I mean, I guess eventually it wasn't just the boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
on
true.
Supernatural.
But and again, I think that's part of the reason that we're not loving it is maybe they should have focused
On just John and Mary.
and maybe fleshed that out a little bit more. Maybe that would have gotten like I might have felt the chemistry a little more. I might have felt
Yeah.
like there was something there more than there was, but they were trying so hard to introduce. And then of course they introduced in the end the 5th chick, Ada.
The bookstore.
bookstore owner. So I don't know. Is she going to be part of their thing now all of a sudden?
Maybe.
Because at the end it was all 5 of them like rushing out of the bookstore.
Well, and let's jump to the end too of what I wrote in my notes is like the next big bad. So I wrote down a whole new big bad, a villain, a monster ? With the Akrita, and I said, "Are we talking about aliens right now?" Because I kind of felt like that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, it was very.
Because then Dean comes back in as the narrator and said something like, well, first of all, before Dean came back in as the narrator, Ada was explaining the Akrita and was like, they're a monster not of this world, and they want to come in and invade and like get rid of all of us and get rid of the demons and get rid of the monsters too. And then Dean
apparently
comes,
that didn't happen.
well, right. Mary and John are going to have to save the day, I guess. But Dean comes back in as the narrator and said something like, it wasn't just a threat to Earth, but to all of existence.
All of existence. Yeah, I wrote that down too. And maybe a big part of this is, and I'm wondering, is Dean telling the story from John's journals? Did Dean go back in time? And this is like a kind of like
exactly.
a quote unquote
how is
side
he
quest,
knowing all this?
Right. Like, is this something that happened before he died, where he went back in time and Castiel worked with him on this, and it never was?
Or is
talked
he
about in the
doing
other
it
show?
from heaven and telling his dad's story?
I hope not.
That would be lame.
That was the very last note that I wrote down. When is Dean doing this? With
Because
50 exclamation question marks.
He's in the Impala. He's young, right?
Yeah.
It's obvious that it was mid-30s for him, which is when he died on Supernatural. So yeah, when did all that happen? And it's a good point. He could be in heaven because anytime he went, he always had the Impala, right?
And it was like no one around. It was that lonely like open road. Yeah, and that was it.
Well, and in the finale of Supernatural, there was a vague, I don't want to say time jump because I don't know that it was, but defeating Chuck to dying on that hunt with Sam, like there could be a huge chunk of time there that we just didn't get to see.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so is that when we're telling this story?
It just seems weird that he'd be doing that without Sam during all that, which is something that you've already brought up.
Right, because it's like, I mean, if he was in heaven,
maybe Sam was asleep in the back seat.
Maybe, because even when they went to heaven, like if you went with that thinking of storyline or whatever, when Sam shows up to heaven, he and Dean go to like their parents' cabin, so it's like supposed to be the four of them again.
Right.
So even if I just feel like either way, where is Sam and why is he not there? And obviously in the actual world of Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles,
Right.
like I understand why not everybody can be a part of it.
You can't write from that plot device of two brothers and one of them being the narrator if the other person's not involved.
See, that's why I think it's the time that's why I think it's the time that Dean spent in heaven before Sam got there.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like that's what it feels like to me.
You know what, though? The way they could make that really cool. And I had written down whenever John's mom turns around, I thought it was Joe at first. And
I
was
thought
like,
that
oh
too.
my God, I love Joe so
She
much.
they do look alike. Yeah.
And like this could be a really good opportunity to bring back Ash and Joe and who was Joe's daughter? I want to say Meg, but that's who she is on Veronica Mars.
I know. I can't think of it either.
You know what I'm talking about because
No,
Meg.
Joe is the daughter. Ellen.
Ellen.
Is
I
the mom.
thought the mom was Ellen. Thank you so much, Whitney, for that.
We both thought at the exact same time.
And so this could be the opportunity to bring back some really cool characters. Some of the big bads didn't die in Supernatural, like the alpha vampire. And what the fuck ever happened with Crowley having red smoke? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot that was still unanswered in that show. So maybe Jensen Ackles is going to use that as an opportunity to answer those questions.
That would be really cool. I would enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, I would too.
So
Wait, can we go back to the Akrita real quick? Because did anybody else? I know nobody else did because this is my weird brain. Like when she was talking about that and the otherworldliness, all I could think about was in the scene when in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure when they go up to the future people and it's all quiet and it's just like one big like. Do you all not remember this scene?
whoa.
I've never seen it.
What?
I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Should
We're
does that
watching
need
that
to be a
girls'
bonus
movie night.
episode?
That should be a bonus
should be.
episode.
We could do that.
But yeah, like all I pictured was that like sort of, calm. I don't know, like otherworldly weird. I don't know.
So you don't know where Socrates came from then? Like when people call Socrates Socrates? It's because they're
guess so.
dumbasses. But they're so funny. It like we'd have to drink a lot and watch it. It's gonna have to be on a girls' trip because it's not the kind of show nowadays that would be enjoyable sober.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna second that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. we're gonna like hype it up, and Whitney's gonna be like, "This is really stupid."
That's why we're gonna have her drink first.
When I made you watch Moulin Rouge, Deb, and you were like, "This is the worst
God,
movie I've ever
hated that
seen."
movie. I knew I was gonna hate it.
It's
I
one of
still
my
hated it.
favorites. Well, you guys want to talk about our nerdiest thing of the week or our nerdiest thing of supernatural fandom?
I would say of the fandom. They've
Yeah.
already heard about our nerdiest thing.
Oh, well,
of the week
that's
is.
true.
Yeah.
I guess for me, honestly, my nerdiest thing is going to be just like going to conventions in the first place, because when we would go, that's how I would describe it to people of like, I'm going to a convention for this TV show that I like. It's the nerdiest thing that I do. Like, that's literally what I would say to
I
people.
miss conventions.
I know.
too.
It was always super fun. I always felt ironically like the least nerdy person in the room. But then I feel like everybody here probably thinks that about themselves.
So
You know what I
here's
mean?
the thing too, because I would say that we're all a little bit socially awkward, and we were like the extroverts in the room.
That's true.
So maybe that's why you didn't feel so nerdy. Like,
Yeah, that's
I felt
probably
like
accurate.
I could, carry on a conversation with the Starbucks barista, and the person in front of me looked like they were going to shit their pants because they were so nervous. I'm like, you have like eaten before, right? Just write it on a piece of paper. We all have anxiety. It's fine.
We do all have anxiety. Yeah, that's true. What about you guys?
Man.
I think for me, going back to the conventions, because there were so many nerdy things that we did, I actually have two. So Deborah and Whitney and I would try to come up with the coolest like poses when we would do photo ops with these people.
Can I guess what I think your favorite pose was? Or do you
God,
know
I
off
don't
the
know.
top
I
of
don't
your
know
head?
what my favorite pose. Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll be honest. One of my very, very favorite photo ops is the one I did with Rob Benedict, where I was dressed up as the chick from the 200th episode.
Yeah.
and we did it. It was almost like a movie poster. It looked like, but I love the one where they fangirled us. And then death grabbing our butt. That was a good one.
That was a really good one.
Oh, and then there. I'm
like, all the ones
I
we
know
took.
they're all great. The when we flashed Cass.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we
had-
had pictures of Jared and Jensen, like goofy looking pictures of them on our crotch. That was pretty
That was
nerdy.
funny.
There's a couple that I really loved, men, and one would be with the guy that played Ketch. He talked about being a douche
Oh,
canoe
that was
in
a
his
good one.
panel, so we look like we're riding a douche canoe. And they used to do these photo ops during the karaoke night with not Rob Benedict, with Rich Spite Jr. and Matt Cohen, right? Spate
Yeah.
Jr. and Matt Cohen, and we would always have them pose us. Well, those were always hilarious, but one night Mindy and I had we would always pregame, and it was like a Halloween weekend, and I was wearing like these pajama like skeleton costumes, and we're like walking through there, and Mindy's just like, "You look hot, unzip that," and unzips my
Like down to her belly button.
right, like my onesie pajamas down to my belly button, and I was like, "Are you trying to get us in the photo op for free? I don't understand what's happening." But of course, I thought it was hilarious. But that's just a really good.
And those ones
memory.
we always ended up. One of us ended up touching Matt's butt.
yeah, they
like,
always
they would
posed
put-
us to
yeah.
touch a butt, which fine.
We weren't sad about that.
no,
They posed you.
they did.
Well, then there was the
Sure.
time that I made Whitney and I shirts for our Jim Beaver photo op that was a beaver that said balls under it, and it had like a ball sack hanging
Which
down.
now
that was
I-
pretty
So
nerdy.
funny.
Which
Yeah.
now I own Whitney's shirt.
Because
Yeah.
because Whitney's husband won't let her wear it.
Shout out to Robbie.
apparently beaver balls aren't appropriate in front of your 3-year-old.
You can't wear that in front of the kids. But why?
So I have two nerdiest things. Number one, I did make us a fandom cocktail. I made whenever Mindy and I way back in the day would go to the cons, we'd always have this drink called the Salt and Burn. It was like this ginger liqueur and fireball and agave in it. So tonight I made like the cousin of that essentially, and it was called the Salt and Burn Float. It's on our Instagram page. It was posted yesterday. If you guys want to check it out, it was actually really delicious. Whitney did not like it. She drank
So I
I
drank
liked
hers
the ice cream.
yeah. Whitney drank really shitty cough syrup wine
instead.
and was not as happy as Mindy and I.
I liked it. I think that's debatable.
I don't know. 2 out of 3 people would not recommend.
We all have to be different sometimes.
That's right. So my other nerdiest thing is during the episode tonight, there was a voiceover, and I said, "Oh my gosh, is that Gil McKinney who played Henry Winchester on the show?" And it totally was.
It was because it was his dad, like his dad's voiceover when he was reading the letter from his dad. It was really cool. It was
Gil McKinney, who is also one of the cutest little people on earth.
Hottie.
Yeah.
I got a selfie with him too at one of the cons.
I only kind of remember him.
Mean.
I'm sorry. Well, those are all of our thoughts, feelings, and concerns about the Winchesters pilot episode. We will be watching, but not making episodes, I guess, unless we really love it. And then we can do another bonus episode.
Maybe we could do mid-season finale.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
That's a good idea.
Good idea, Deb. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.